session. So our today's guest is Mr. Rituraj. He's a climate activist from Assam, and he's the person who has walked both the poles. And all of in the introduction, I would start that he's the person who quit his government job just to dedicate himself to the nature conservation and wildlife conservation and to fight against the climate change. That's the problem not only in one region of a place, but it's a problem all over the world. And he's also the person who has joined Robert Swan in the expedition in the poles. And Robert Swan, of course, is the first person to walk on those poles. And we are very pleased to have you in today's session. So yes, we will know a lot about you in today's session. But first of all, I would like to know, as I spoke, that you are the person who, walked on the poles. So before you did that expedition, how was your life before that? Were you dedicated towards nature conservation, environment conservation, towards climate change? How was it before the expedition?
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me here, Kashif. And that's a great question to start off with. Of course, like you mentioned, I quit my job to work for, conservation, and started with first with uh, conservation of a bird known as the greater Edgerton stork, and we had this Central Zoo Authority approved rescue and rehabilitation center here, where we rescued and then hand raised and then rehabilitated the chicks of the greater adjutant, and and that was a very quite a successful project. And then following that, we saw that incidents of human elephant conflict were intensifying along the hill and the plain districts in Assam. And so we started going to these areas to find out what was happening. And we found out, of course, a lot of internal as well as external factors. And I was working with human elephant conflict. We are trying to mitigate the impacts. We are trying to restore the uh, age old bond that existed between humans and elephants in these areas. And that took up a lot of the time. And then, of course, I watched this very profound film by documentary by Mr. Al Gore called An Inconvenient Truth. And that actually introduced me to climate change. And I started taking interest more and more. And then the expeditions happened, firstly to Antarctica, which actually made me a climate activist. But I guess that will come later.
Yeah, but it's really an inspiring and fascinating journey to know how you started and how you worked for species, and then later on in the human elephant conflict. So yes, it all started with this expedition. And when all of our audience would be very keen to know that how did you receive the invitation from Robert Swan, and when did you join it, and how all of it happened?
So around the middle of 2012, I guess I got this information from Mr. Bittu Sehgal that there is this expedition happening that's organized by Mr. Robert Swan. And till that point of time, I didn't know who he was. Of course, he's the first man to have walked to both the poles.
Yeah.
So he's probably one of the legendary, last of the legendary explorers that the world has seen. And after Mr. Sehgal gave me the information, I of course went and looked at what it was about. And since I was already, working with climate change issues and trying to figure out how we are being impacted, what can be the community response, and how is it related to the increasing instances of human-animal conflict. So I thought this was a good opportunity to go and learn at the frontiers, and that was in 2012, right? So I applied, and I had to submit, of course, an application with why I wanted to go there, what I would expect to learn from that expedition, and what I would do once I come back. So all that happened, and then I got selected, and then another 6 months of preparation, of course, which and then fundraising, which took a lot of planning and a lot of resources to make it happen. But finally, in March, uh, actually, the last week of February, I started traveling because you have to travel a long distance to go to Antarctica, right? So from here to uh, Argentina, and I never been abroad, so this my first trip abroad was to Antarctica. So uh,
Wow.
that was I had to go for all this visa, um get the visa approved by the Argentine embassy in New Delhi, then come back to Assam, and then again. Finally, on I think 26th or 27th of February 2013, we started the journey from here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it must be a very fascinating journey for you. I mean, your first journey with such a great noble man, and you must have gone through different experiences, different challenges while going on that expedition. And we would, I mean, like to know that how that experience shaped your thinking towards nature conservation, and what did it all bring up?
Well, firstly, the most important thing to realize is how profound an impact humans have, on the planet.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that you see when you reach the, Antarctic continent is that there are remains of wooden boats. There are remains of whale bones
Mhm.
scattered all along the beaches.
Wow.
And that's from a time when humans were hunting whales for the blubber. Before the discovery of electricity, blubber was used to burn the lamps, right? And people will go there to hunt the whales, and then they will kill the penguins to eat them. And if electricity was not discovered when it was, it would probably have destroyed Antarctica.
Oh.
So those signs of human destruction still remain. The continent, of course, recovered because it became unsustainable for humans to go and start hunting. I mean, continue hunting there after electricity became uses became widespread. So somehow the continent again reverted back. It recovered after the humans stopped hunting. Actually, uh, so that was the first impression that you get. Okay, no place, however remote it is on this planet, is immune from human impacts, right? Even Antarctica was almost destroyed at one point of time. So that was, I think, something that hit almost all of us. Second, of course, that continent, the way it is, there is ice and snow everywhere. It is very cold and very windy. Definitely there are no trees, or most of it's like barren, so it is very windy as well. The wind chill is something that you cannot prepare for. Of course, you are very well dressed with all the required layers. You expect to be in sub zero temperatures, but minus 30, 40.
Oh.
You expect to be exposed to that, but then when the wind chill hits you, you're not prepared for that. And then second thing is, you can always watch videos and see how Antarctica looks like, or you can see the penguin antics and how they behave and all that. But what you don't prepare for is the smell, right? So
True.
as a continent, this it smells different. Firstly, there is a freshness, crispiness in the air, which is not there anywhere else. And then there is penguin poop everywhere. So that also gives you a different kind of smell, right?
True.
Uh, so yeah, it is. I think there are a lot of things to learn, of course, but you see that it is really so wild because they're not used to humans visiting. They don't run away when you land on the continent. So from the ship, we take this small boats and then reach the shore. And when you reach the shore, they're not scared of you.
Oh.
They, even though they used to be hunting a long time back, but that's like maybe 100 years before. So
Mhm.
now the penguins, they come running to you. The seals are curious to see, who is coming. They're not afraid. So it is a different world, definitely.
Oh, I mean, it's really, I mean, hearing from you such kind of experience is really a different kind of thing. I would say a different kind of world to live in. seeing penguins, because we have been doing, I mean, watching it on mobile phones, watching videos, and then going and watching it live in front of your eyes must be a very different kind of experience. But when you went to the pole, like Antarctica, so are there any changes happening there? And are those changes impacting other regions or other countries like India?
Absolutely. I grew up in the middle of the Assam movement, in the late 19, in the 1980s, late 1970s and, 1980s, uh, which was basically against people who had immigrated to our region from our neighboring country. And, you know, standing in Antarctica, it reminded me of why that had happened. It connected me to the childhood memories of spending time quarantine. I mean, like a lockdown like situation when we would spend like weeks and months because the schools and colleges were closed. There used to be curfew, uh, and the reason is that one fine day, very early morning at I think 6 a.m. It was very very cold. It was snowing, and Robert Swan, he invited us to come on the deck of the ship, and we are all very curious, like what was happening. And then when we went up on the deck, he pointed to this large tabular icebergs that were floating, around the ship, massive icebergs, really. And he said, he clearly asked us one question: How many of you do believe in climate change? Of course, this was in 2013. Not many people believed that humans could cause so much damage to the Earth, and and he said, "Well, now you can see climate change because these icebergs, they are here in this place called Antarctic Sound, and they should not be here. But these are remains of the Larsen B ice shelf, which had
Oh,
collapsed in 2002,
oh,
right?
I see.
And Larsen B was, it was like geologically stable for over 10,000 years. And scientists at that time, when they discovered the first cracks, they said that it would take perhaps months and years to completely disintegrate. But after the first cracks were discovered, within I think 3 or 4 weeks, the entire Larsen B ice shelf had collapsed. And 11 years later, when we are there in that area, Antarctic Sound, those tabular icebergs were still floating there.
Mm,
So, that was the impression that I got, and it really took me back to the childhood memories because I know that, Bangladesh being the lowest, lying country in the world is also the most vulnerable to sea level rise. And if that happens, of course, there will be a lot of migration caused by sea level rise, and we can call them climate refugees, or we can call them, just the mass exodus of people that will be forced to escape the rising sea levels. And that time, I don't think any border security force or border fencing could stop the movement of people trying to escape these conditions. So that really resonated with me because it connected to my childhood memories of the Assam movement. And in fact, I think the next day I again got an email from we had connections sometimes. So I got an email from Mr. Bitu Segal saying that, "Hey, can you do a solidarity from Antarctica with 350.org? Solidarity with the Pacific Warriors Day of Action." So on March 2nd, the 15 Pacific Island nations in 2013, had decided to commemorate the day as Pacific Warriors Day of Action. And
oh,
that was globally coordinated by 350.org and Bill McBain, the founder. And I went to, got a banner, and took a marker from the ship, and then hand wrote on that, in solidarity with the Pacific Island nations on climate change. And I did the solidarity from Antarctica in support of the 15 Pacific Island nations. So that was my first act of climate action or climate as a climate activist. I think that is when I would say was the time when I became a climate activist in Antarctica. Yeah.
That's really a lovely experience. And yes, you have seen those changes with your eyes. So, absolutely, the idea of climate change cannot be denied. It is a problem and it is increasing day by day. And like you have been to Arctic, Antarctica, to Himalayas. Like I, as a researcher, has also been working in the Himalayas. I have observed the impact of climate change on the species, the direct impact change. Like the Asiatic black bear, I noticed that it did not hibernate at all because of the low snowfall. The optimum level of snowfall it needed to enter hibernation did not happen at all. So, have you realized any such common patterns throughout this Arctic, Antarctica, Himalayas? Any similar kind of patterns you observed?
I think absolutely that's a great question, or a discussion point that you have raised. I mean, let's quickly, start with Antarctica. We have seen that the populations of different penguin species have dramatically either decreased or increased because of the climatic changes. For example, Gentoo penguins, which do not depend so much on sea ice, their populations and colonies have increased dramatically across Antarctica, whereas species of penguins that are dependent on sea ice, like the chinstrap penguin or the uh, or some of the other penguins, their populations are going down, right? So that is one documented scientific study. And overall, there are seabirds that are being affected. The seals, different species of seals, are being affected. They're forced to migrate further and further south, even in Antarctica, because the conditions are getting warmer. Uh, you know, what we have seen that especially in the polar regions, the species that survive the harsh climates have evolved to adapt to the conditions uh, which we describe as harsh or too cold, but for them that is ideal, right?
Yeah.
And now it's this minute changes in temperatures that is creating a massive upheaval in the entire ecosystem, and it is even more profoundly evident in the Arctic. The first time I went to the Arctic was in 2015. I spent a few weeks at the Churchill Northern Studies Center, that is located in the Canadian Arctic, which, Churchill is also known as the polar bear capital of the world or the beluga whale capital of the world, along with being the best place for observing northern lights. But let me tell you about the polar bears, because you started the story of the Asiatic bears. I must tell you the story of the polar bears, and they have, emerged basically as uh, one of the species that might go extinct because of climate change. So one of the mega species. Uh, Firstly, there are many things. I'll probably mention just three. In Churchill, the polar bears live and hunt on the waters of the Hudson Bay, right? Now, because the waters of the Hudson Bay are freezing later in the year and melting earlier, the window of hunting that the polar bear has, the polar bears, it waits for the pups of the seals to emerge from the ice, like many would have seen in Animal Planet or National Geographic, and then they hunt those
Okay.
pups, right?
Yeah.
And now, because that window of hunting is decreasing, they have adapted by having less babies. There is documented scientific evidence that in the past, polar bear, cubs would be, two is the most common, but there will be many mothers moving around with three cubs. But now, three has become almost rare. But two is also becoming rarer, and they're choosing to raise only one cubs.
Oh,
Now, very interestingly, how the polar bears can do that is because that's the only species where the mothers can choose when they get impregnated. That means
that's interesting.
even after receiving the semen from the male, they can hold it, and then they can choose to uh, get be pregnant at the ideal time, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So that ability to choose makes them also, gives them the ability to adapt. So they have chosen to have lesser babies. So that is one impact I can think of that is very profound, I think. And the second is we see is that uh, because the conditions are becoming warmer, the grizzly bear, which is mostly in the south to the polar areas, southern parts of uh, the polar bear habitat, are now moving into the north because it's getting warmer, and there are hybrids coming up, which are called either Prisleys or growler bears,
Oh,
depending on whose genes are dominant, right? So these hybrids between the polar bear and the grizzly bear, in the long term, is not good for the survival of the species. So
absolutely.
that is another threat that has come up, and besides that, I would also probably mention the Arctic fox, which it doesn't do much of a hunting. It just follows the polar bear around, right? And the polar bear will eat only the fat and then move on. And the Arctic fox will just eat the remains, the leftovers. But with the window of hunting for the polar bear becoming less, the Arctic fox itself is also suffering from they have to travel longer to find food. And then the red fox is also moving into the Arctic fox. The red fox is very adaptive. It is, as you know, it is found across the world,
Yes.
even in Himalayas in Europe. And the red fox is bigger, larger than the Arctic fox. And if they're in the same territory, the red fox will always win because they're bigger and stronger. So that is also affecting the Arctic fox populations. But one more thing that I think I should definitely mention is that I was also part of these studies looking at the impact on microorganisms, right? So I was part of this mesocosm, where it's a multi-year study of how wetland dynamics work and how the survivability of tadpoles of the two species of frogs. There's the Arctic boreal frog and the American wood frog, which survive in the cold wetlands of the largest ephemeral wetlands of the Arctic, and the three species of scuttlefish. So what we did in this mesocosm is we had different temperatures in different pods, uh, and then we found out that when the temperatures increase subtly, very subtle changes actually affect the lifestyle and abilities to survive of both the tadpoles for these two species of frogs as well as the fingerlings for the fishes. So those are changes that is undermining the entire Arctic ecosystem, and we also looked at how permafrost melting is changing the Arctic, how the tree line is moving further and further north, so it is replacing the boreal forests are moving further into the north, where there used to be the tundra, and now we have more trees. So all these changes are affecting the populations of all the Arctic animals. In the marine animals, there are even more. I could also think of the beluga whales or the narwhal, which are only specific to the Arctic, right?
Yeah.
And now, because of warming, predators like the orcas are traveling further and further north. So, and they're preying on these whales, and these whales don't know how to escape because they never had predators in the past, right? So all the Greenland right whale, the orcas, they're hunting them. The orcas are also hunting the beluga whales, the bow-headed whales. These Arctic whales never had predators, but now they have to face these predators. And we also see them getting trapped in this, the ice melt. They're sometimes trapped in these pools. So there are a lot of cascading impacts seen across the Arctic with animals.
Oh, I mean, the changes are, really moving when, listening to these changes. Like, we cannot deny, and it is much, much more than we expect, than we realize the impact of climate change, the direct impact on the species from like foxes, polar bears, grizzly bears, penguins. I mean, it's really disturbing to know. But yes, to fight the climate change, we have developed an idea of sustainability. And you have been working with the indigenous communities, as I read about you. Have you noticed anything, or has indigenous communities taught you anything about sustainability to fight this climate change?
Well, if the entire world would have continued to live the way that everybody's indigenous ancestors once did, then we'd never have this problem, right? Now, science tell us, including various studies by the World Bank, the IPBES, uh, etc., which says that 80% of the remaining biodiversity and I think 70% of the remaining natural places on Earth are still in areas that are managed, owned, or governed by indigenous people. So that itself tells you the whole story, right? Indigenous peoples, indigenous cultures are always rooted to the ground. In fact, everything is derived from the biodiversity. Every food that is consumed by indigenous communities is local and seasonal, and by default, they have a very low carbon footprint.
True.
And I think that the if you look at sustainability, the first thing we have to look at the food systems. So indigenous food systems are the most important way to understand that the indigenous way of life, as it existed for millennia, is what not only is sustainable but also kept them healthy. It is also good for your health and well-being, and it is how their bodies have adapted to survive in the environment where they were born and brought up. So, despite being separated by like thousands of miles, you'll find that there is a common thread in indigenous communities around different continents, and that is the deep-rooted connection to nature. Uh, and we do not find destruction in indigenous areas. We do not find extractive exploitation. We find exploitation when people from the urban areas feel the need for resources. In many ways, it is similar to colonial exploitation. If I go back to Churchill, the first time I went to the Arctic was Churchill, and Churchill also happened to be the headquarters of the Hudson Bay Company. A model of exploitation, or removal of resources that was later continued by the various East India companies. So all that initially, if it was only to get the resources to the great cities of Europe or the colonial countries, uh, that exploitation now is to feed our own people in our own countries, right? Most
True.
of the extraction is required to sustain the big cities, to sustain the way of life that city dwellers are hooked to, which is far removed from nature. It is exploitative, it is unsustainable, and it is creating a massive shortfall in how much resources the earth can provide us to be
True.
sustainable. If you look at the earth overshoot days, it is getting closer day by day, and we are now living as if we have 1 point some 8 earths. The earth should have been one earth and then another eighth part of its equivalent to sustain the kind of demand of for resources that we have. So we are not sustainable, frankly. None of us who are using technology of any kind, uh, we are not sustainable. Of course, the developed countries cause these problems by their massive use of resources in the past, but in trying to catch up, the developing countries are also now guilty of ignoring the best interests of indigenous people and local communities around the world, who have not only been sustainable but who also have, or who are key to ensuring that we can somehow maybe turn around the cascading impacts of climate change.
Oh, it's really, I mean, great to know about the indigenous communities there. lifestyles, their eating habits, and absolutely we are not at all following that sustainable way of living. As you have been working with the indigenous communities, you have been working with the locals, with the students, policymakers. So, what do you see? I mean, does they make you like if you talk of children or people of like my age group, the Gen Z, and I mean, what do they feel you make more anxious, or do they make you feel hopeful about the future?
Oh, I am absolutely hopeful because I became a climate activist. I would say I would describe it as three phases of my journey as a climate activist.
Mhm.
First was the fear, right?
Yeah.
Why I was a climate activist? I always used to think that I was afraid for the future of the next generations of my children, of my daughter, and the second was the hope, and the hope that I saw in the more I read about how young people have always been at the leadership of the modern environmental movement, from Severn Kalish Suzuki at the Earth Summit in 1992 uh, to people like uh, Felix Finkbeiner, Greta Thunberg, and our own Ridhima Pandey, and all the legions of young people I meet every year across campuses in India as well as abroad. I think young people, they already they know the science, they have a grasp of the enormity of the problem, and they are very, very positive. They have the answers, and even if they don't have the answers now, they are eager to, put their heads and hearts into finding the answers. So I think that gives me hope. And then there is inspiration. We have this incredible people who have been role models for humanity, and I feel that these inspirational people with their inspirational ideas are very, very uh, you know they are key to turning the fight back on climate change, as well as biodiversity laws, pollution, and all the other environmental problems, which all, by the way, are related. And sometimes when we talk about the SDGs, we try to think that they're all different. Like we try to think that there is poverty and there is food, there is water scarcity, but I think they are all interconnected. And if we do not solve the climate crisis, we'll never reach the sustainable development goals by 2030 or 2040 or 2050. I
True.
don't think, unless everybody, all most of the countries have set to 2050 as the date of going net zero, as a year of going net zero. Some others, like India, have 2070 uh, as the target year for going net zero. But I don't know if we will really, the world will, the humans will survive on the planet until that time, if we do not have some massive turnaround in emissions. Uh, so, but I do definitely would always say that um, when I started working in this sector, most students were very much alienated from the environmental world. But now I see that all the young people are very, very much familiar with what is happening on the climate front, and they're eager to be good citizens. They're eager to be good environmental, responsible, in whatever they do in their careers. Um, I also always, sometimes people ask me, what keeps you going on for so long? Why are you a climate activist even after all these years? And I always tell them that I am just selfish, and I give a call to all, everybody who's listening, that be selfish and be a climate activist. Think of your family, think of your children, or think of your parents, and see the kind of changes that is happening, and how it is happening there, yeah, how it is affecting their health and well-being. And this is nothing compared to what is coming in the future. So it is getting worse every year. And if you have children, we are basically pushing them into a uncharted territory. We do not know how they will uh, survive in a world where food security, food availability will be a big problem. It will be difficult to travel. It will be difficult to work because of the heat, and of course, hunger and heat will also drive conflicts. So it is a bad, future we are looking at, and therefore, I think it is very important. Everybody should be selfish and be an environmental and climate activist.
Absolutely. You have rightly spoken this thing. And I think this is the best time to shift to a sustainable way of living. And I hope the younger generation like me and all those who watch this video or in the session shift to sustainable way of living and take a lead forward. So yeah, here I would, I mean, know from you that I mean we had spent a great time in Mumbai last year, and I mean you're the first person I would say in whose company I got to. I mean, you had a very strict diet, the vegan diet, and yeah. So I mean, you told me that you shifted to I mean being a vegan. So how did this became a part of the environmental philosophy?
Well, I have been traveling a lot, since I became, a climate activist, working with different organizations. I get invited to speak at different events and
Yes.
go to different, discussions. And while traveling, the impact that we have on the environment is massive, right? You're flying across countries, across continents. And I was looking at a way where I could make an reduction in my personal emissions, in my personal carbon footprint every day. And I then I found out about the vegan diet, and it was not very hard because dairy is not a huge part of where I live in Northeast. We do not use dairy too much in cooking. So if you are vegetarian, you are essentially a vegan for most parts. So I thought that, if I follow a plant-based diet, it would be the best way for me to reduce my personal carbon footprint. And then it came at a time, of course, a lot of people in the West, including all our, climate heroes. I also volunteer with the Climate Reality Project. I was trained as a climate reality leader by Mr. Al Gore, who won the Nobel Prize for bringing climate science from the scientific domain to the mainstream back in 2007. And then he also was a vegan, and I thought, I read about the diet. I thought it was pretty healthy. It would be easier for me to do that, and therefore I made the change, and that's a commitment that's been almost 11 years now. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing. I mean, for people like North Indian or people of Kashmir, it's very difficult to shift the diet to, I mean, such a strict diet and then, I mean, dedicate yourself so much to the environmental conservation. And yes, like people today, I mean, they hear about climate change and they get sort of overwhelmed when they hear about the consequences, the impact that climate change is having. So, what practical actions do you suggest that people can do, I mean, in the current times?
I think we really have to just make informed consumer choices. Uh, if we make this informed consumer choices and we stay true to our respective cultural, ethnic identities and habits, I think we have done a huge part by sticking to those. Like, for example, uh, if we choose to eat local seasonal foods wherever we live, that already reduces your footprint considerably, rather than eating westernized processed foods that are prepared in some faraway place, packed, transported, and then served to you, which takes a huge lot of energy. So that is one way. Of course, as you are probably aware that I have written a book called uh, a hand Everyday Climate Action, a handbook for Gen Z.
Gen Z, yes.
That also has been translated. to Assamese, but it's there on Amazon on English. There are so many things that one could do. And there are so many ways that one could get inspired from. So please have a look at that. I think you definitely identify with so many things. I mean, you could be an artist, you could make an impression on others, you could be a poet, you could be anything, anywhere. You could become something that you always wanted to be, and you still be making a positive impact on the planet. There are so many things to do. I mean, you cannot just point out that you should do that or you should do that. I mean, everybody could just maybe pause and think, what can I do to make myself better,
True.
a better citizen for the world? And then he would have found his own way. The book also has a lot of other things that you could do. So I think the Gen Z and all the generations after are very smart, and they definitely know the way forward.
Oh, I mean, it's really wonderful, and yeah, these small things can have an impact, have, I mean, a difference we want in the current times. And I would recommend everyone to order the book from Amazon and read that book so that you could know more how to fight the crisis right now. And if you could suggest one thing about the global response to climate change, what would it be?
Well, I think we have really not shown the urgency. I think global negotiations have faltered in the last, you know, uh, 3 4 years. It is not just because of the US pulling out, but also because of the wars, the impact of emissions from the wars that are happening in Europe and in Central Asia are massive. Uh, and somehow, if you look at why these wars are happening, it is again goes back to the control over the resources that we want to phase out, the fossil fuels that we do not want to continue unless, I'm afraid that unless something huge happens, some big tragedy where a lot of people succumb to the impacts, and uh, then the world can collectively probably act. That will, that wake up call needs. I thought we had, and now we can look back and say that the pandemic lockdown was as an example, but I thought that was a great global response within a short time. um, all the factories were shut, travel was limited, everything was good,
Touch
and
down. Yeah,
yeah, and we saw that emissions were down, we saw that wildlife sightings increased, we saw that the atmosphere pollution had all improved, the planet as a whole had recovered.
true.
And that actually gave me a hope that maybe we will also be able to achieve something very similar in a short period of time, in on the climate front. But and then we had some world leaders who turned back the decisions. We had we had the wars going on, and now I feel that we are somehow losing it. You know, um, Even the great movements that we are seeing happening across Europe with Extinction Rebellion, with Fridays for Future, all those have also somehow fallen back, perhaps because of the harsh response, the litigation, the cases, the cruelty that are inflicted upon protesters by various governments. But I think that is the short term, and uh, the youth will once again rise together, because this is not a fight to save the earth, it is a fight to save human beings as a species. So the future of the youth, the future of whoever lives on this planet after them, is dependent on taking quick climate action, and that means quickly phasing out, quickly getting out of this fossil fuel addiction.
That's very rightly said. And considering all of these challenges, these things, what kind of planet do you hope for the future generations to inherit?
Well, right now, if we look at that, this is, everything on this planet is becoming dangerous, right? We are, if you look at wildfires, it is devastating communities across Europe, across North America, across South America. And if we are not seeing it in the headlines in India yet, we should not be complacent. You must be aware that if you look at the Forest Survey of India report, forest fires in India are the biggest cause of loss of Himalayan mountains, right? Already.
Yes.
So, so it is going to come to us as well. Then we have the exponential rise in flooding. Flooding has happened in so many places in so many ways, even in across Europe. So we are not just the developing world, not just the global south having to face the consequences. Even across the most developed countries, they are facing that. Then we have the rise of diseases. We have, all this impact. So we are inheriting, we are bequeathing a very, very dangerous world to our future generation. This is not what we want to do. The sustainable development goals, we have 4 years to reach them. If you look at the SDG report, annual reports, we are not on track to reach any of the targets under any of the goals.
Oh,
No country. This is horrible. We are not, we
absolutely.
never achieved the Millennium Development Goals. We are not going to, we had 30 years to achieve SDGs, but no, we are not going to do it. So it is a dangerous world. I mean, that's a fact. And we do not want our children to inherit that. That's the reason I said, everybody be
Absolutely.
selfish. I mean, I don't know who the politicians are working for. Definitely, it's the corporates who are funding them, but they are not
Absolutely.
working for the people. So it is the duty of every citizen, every youth, I think, especially the youth, that be selfish. And otherwise, we are not going to win this. We don't want to
Absolutely.
inherit a dangerous planet.
Yes, absolutely. A person can start at least by thinking of his own self, by thinking of his family. That's how the change starts. So it's very rightly pointed out. We need to be selfish in this case, and we
Yeah.
need to work better on these crises. So there is a lot to speak on this topic. I mean, not ours, but it will take different sessions to complete different perspectives of climate change. But the last message I would, if you could give a last message to our viewers, to our listeners, that what would it be?
Well, I think it is very important that we take ownership. We should take ownership of whatever environmental problem we see in our neighborhood, in our community. It could be waste, and everything is connected. Even if you see a waste dump, a open waste area, that means it is emitting methane, right? So, which is, methane is even stronger than carbon dioxide in trapping atmospheric heat. So that is a problem. So if you could take ownership and get your municipality or your political leadership to solve that, uh, then that is a one step forward, right? So everybody, everywhere, at any level, can take ownership of the local environmental problem, and you are not only taking ownership of that problem, but you are adding to the solutions that the world needs. So I think
Absolutely.
that would be my final message.
Oh, that's, I mean, really, we can start at least by our own selves, by, teaching our families, our relatives, our friends. This is the best thing we can do right now. And yeah, it was really, an amazing session with you. We got to learn so many new things about you, the changes, the climate change we are having right now. So it's really wonderful to have. I mean, it was really an amazing thing to have you today in today's session as our guest, and really we are overwhelmed. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to so many this kind of sessions in the future times. And thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kashif, and thanks to all the viewers for listening. And hopefully, we will get to chat again soon. Thank you, and best
Definitely,
of luck.
definitely. Thank you so much. Okay, okay. So
Bye.
bye, bye.